But I want to start off by saying this. You're going to hear two different opinions on this show, right, about what these audio recordings mean. One from a perspective of somebody that supports Donald Trump, of course, and JD, and one of myself who can't stand the man, who thinks he's just despicable. But before we get to the audio, and before we talk about this in detail, I just want to say a couple things, because in my estimation, in the last 4 years, to me, this is the most dangerous thing that Donald Trump has done. And we'll get to that, and I'll explain why. But before all you Trump supporters out there want to say, well, he didn't want to scare people. That's all. He didn't want to scare people. Then why is it that in the last few months since these protests start, he's been making it out to be that black people are going to take over your cities if you vote for Joe Biden, led by Cory Booker? Why is it that he's talking about voter fraud every day? Why is it that he talked about Mexican caravans at the border ready to murder your children and rape your wives? So let's not use that excuse. But I will say this, and this is obvious before we get to the audio. He knew now. We know. He knew in early February the virus was airborne and deadly. In fact, he said it 5 times more deadly than the flu. He said it himself. He said this is deadly stuff. Now, most of us didn't know that then. Most of us in early February, I certainly didn't. Most of us didn't know how deadly this virus was, but he did, and it's in his own words. And while this was all going on, he sent tons of PPE to China. The same day on February 7th, he did one of the interviews with Woodward. Trump also held 6 campaign rallies in the next few weeks after this interview, where no masks were being worn, no warnings. One of which was right here in Las Vegas. Then a few weeks later, he told us it was just like the flu. He mocked politicians for wearing masks, even Joe Biden, as early as a month ago. He held campaign rallies. He still does today, with little to no social...
Are you reading a speech, Brian?
No, I'm doing a radio show. Do you have a problem with that?
Okay. But
unlike you, I take notes and I prepare for the show.
You actually prepared a document to read. Okay, I got you.
You don't understand what preparing for a radio show is?
I totally get it.
Okay,
Brian.
all right. I'm sorry I'm prepared and you're not. I apologize. So a few weeks later, he told us it was just like the flu. He mocked politicians for wearing masks, even Joe Biden, as I mentioned. And then today, still little to no social distancing when it comes to his campaign rallies. Later in February, we will treat this like the flu. You will get a shot. It's just like the flu, he said. It'll disappear. There's so much stuff to get to here. He also visited the CDC a few weeks later. He said he was shocked people even died from the flu. But he told Bob Woodward he knew exactly how many people died from the flu every year, around 25,000 at least. So he lied when he was at the CDC. He also said it's not just old people, Bob. Plenty of young people getting very sick. So he knew young people were getting sick from this virus. But then later he said it's the elderly. Children handle it very well. He said that on August 5th. Very little impact on young children. Schools should open up. Everything should open up. But he told Bob Woodward, I wanted to always play it down. I don't want to create a panic. Panic about violence and race. He has no problem with soaking fear in American suburbs. That's okay. The suburbs are next, he said. If you elect Biden, the suburbs will be overblown with violence and crime. So if he doesn't want to scare people, why would he say something like that? It didn't have to be this way. That's the problem. And we're going to get to the audio now, but I'll end by saying it didn't have to be this way. If the president said in public what he was willing to say in private to Bob Woodward, the bottom line is lives would have been saved. Now, if you haven't heard the audio, and if you haven't heard some of the stuff that he said to Bob Woodward, we're going to go through this now. We'll run down it. We'll give our opinions on it. But this was on February 7th, and some of the most telling things he said were on February 7th. That's very early. Like I said, none of us really knew how serious this virus was, but the president seemed to. This is President Donald Trump on tape on February 7th saying that the coronavirus is more deadly than the flu. I want you to have a listen to this.
What was President Xi saying yesterday?
Well, we were talking mostly about the virus, and I think he's going to have it in good shape, but it's a very tricky situation.
Indeed,
it goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. The touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. People don't realize we lose 25,000, 30,000 people a year here. Who would ever think that, right?
I know. It's
pretty amazing. And then I say, well, is that the same thing? This is more deadly. This is 5 per. This is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%. So this is deadly stuff.
Now, keep in mind what the president just said there. That was on February 7th. This is on February 26th, when he compared the virus to the flu. Have a listen to this.
People die from the flu, and this is very unusual. And it is a little bit different, but in some ways it's easier, and in some ways it's a little bit tougher. But we have it so well under control. View this the same as the flu. When somebody sneezes, I try and bail out as much as possible.
So he's telling Bob Woodward how serious the coronavirus is, up to 5 times more serious. He said that on February 7th.
He did not say that it was as deadly as the flu. He said that when someone sneezes, I try to bail out as soon as possible, meaning that this thing is airborne. And if someone sneezes with COVID-19, that it can spread that way. He did not say it was just as deadly to the American public, Brian.
Okay, so I'm just going by what he said to Bob Woodward. I'm not giving my opinion. I'm just going by what he said. And on what he said to Bob Woodward on February 7th, he said that this is up to 5 times more deadly. He said
5% compared to 1%,
yeah,
which means 50 times more deadly because the flu is actually 0.1%.
He also said it's like the flu. That's what he said. He compared it to the flu.
He said it's like the flu, and you didn't finish the statement. What else did he say after that, Brian?
So you're saying because
he said it's like the flu. If you sneeze and you're nearby, when someone sneezes and they have the flu, I bail out and I get away.
Okay.
That's what he compared it to. He didn't say it was as deadly as the flu.
Okay,
there is a major difference there.
I never said that. What he said was it was 5 times more serious than the flu.
You're implying that him saying it's like the flu means that he's only talking about how deadly it is and not talking about how it can be spread like the flu, which is what he's talking about. You're taking what he's saying out of context.
Absolutely not.
You absolutely are.
Okay, so let me explain why I'm not. JD is making excuses for the president,
which I
was prepared for. So he also called this a hoax. In February, he called this a Democratic hoax. He has consistently, those months, February, March, even April, called it a hoax, the coronavirus. A Democratic hoax.
He did not call it a hoax.
Yes, he did.
No, he said,
yes, he did.
He said that the hoax is how the Democrats are saying that the Republicans and the Trump administration is responding to it.
Okay.
That's what he said. Okay. Again, you're taking it out of context.
Right. I take everything out of context.
There should be a buzzer for you taking stuff out of context.
Okay. Well, there should be a buzzer again for every time you interrupt me, but I know you don't want that to happen.
I did not interrupt you, Brian.
He called it a hoax in public, period. Now, if you want to make excuses, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that.
No,
but Trump